Welcome back to the our Regcast today. We're working out, you've got all your applications. What do you do with them when you migrate into Windows 7? It's quite a complicated and difficult story, and the Co-op are going to help us sort it out. So, you know me, my name's Tim Phillips, but let's look at who else we've got on today. So, starting at the far end, from the Co-op, our special guest for today, Ian Cawson. Ian, welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much. Ian Cawson, technical architect at the Co-operative. Basically, we're owned by 6 million members, which is fairly unique in the UK, and we have approximately 20,000 devices, and we've been on a journey now since about September 2009 in virtualization and our steps and planning for Windows 7.
That's sounding like quite a big project. Are you sorry you started it?
Oof, no, it's I think the key word that you just sort of pinched on there is we started.
Yeah.
And yes, it's not a big bang, it's a journey. Keeping it into manageable chunks is what our philosophy has been, and we've learned lessons on the way.
Great, we're going to find out what some of those lessons are, and also we're going to find out some of that from Paul. You've been helping Ian along the way.
We have indeed, and I'm CTO at a software company called AppDNA. And we have a technology which helps organisations like Ian who are facing this complexity, Windows migration, virtualization, asking the questions, how do I manage my applications through this process? And our technology is all about automating and analysing and bringing analytics to the problem.
And normally, do your projects last this sort of length of time?
Well, the reality of the migration is that the migration and the change process will take that long. The applications and the stuff that we can bring, can do relatively quickly at the beginning. Historically, this was about a manual, test all of my applications, take a really long time to understand where I stand, and we're able to now bring automation to that. So the project itself, yes, 12 to 18 months. You should expect to spend a fair amount of time on all of the moving parts, which include users, hardware, and all of those moving parts. But we're able to bring a significant set of automation and speed to the application.
It means you have to get on well with your clients, doesn't it?
We try.
Yes, yeah. There's kind of some rueful laughter there for a minute. I seem to have touched on that. No, but I mean, it's a long. You've got to work together for a long time. You don't just come in, tell them what to do, and.
You're dead right, and making the change, getting started is the first step. And once you've spent the time and you've actually moved, what about life after that? It's really important that you keep the processes that you implemented during the transformation going on, onwards. And that's the story for us as well. We're not a point-in-time solution. We're all about helping manage the application life cycle on an ongoing basis, and that's important.
Okay, and we're going to find out how that happens. And also today, from our old mates Freeform Dynamics, Dale, the boss of Isle. Dale, hello.
Thank you. I haven't got my glasses on today, Tim, so if you see me squinting, that's why it is. It's not some kind of tick I've developed or something.
Yes, it's the stress of having to do 3 Regcasts.
Third one this week, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, we're getting used to it now, aren't we? Now, this is one of those projects where there's a lot of, well, you could call it messiness, but it's real-world stuff. This isn't all about sort of marketing and hype. This is about really getting into your IT architecture, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's. I can't remember who said it recently, but I was in some session and someone said, "Well, the only point of an operating system is to allow you to run apps," and I think that's what it's about. I mean, we talk about
Sky, wasn't it?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're on the apps thing today, which is the important bit.
Working out how to run those apps. No, we'll do the housekeeping for you now, so that will be actually for some of you who logged in early because we updated. We update right until the last minute. We're kind of like
fine tuning.
Oh yeah, it's how everyone does software these days. So why can't we do our Regcast like it? So if you have if anything sticks, then just refresh your browser and it'll all magically work out okay. At least that's what they're telling me. If you've got a problem with that, then don't send in a question about that because I don't know how to solve it. But do send in your questions about what these guys are talking about how you deal with your applications load. They've got a lot of practical experience, and so they'll give you a straight answer to a straight question. So ask your straight questions. Don't complain afterwards that they didn't talk about the things you're interested in. You've got to help yourselves. You can download the slides. You can also give us your feedback afterwards. Tell us whether you liked what we did. So let's crack on with it. Dale, update us, because this is part of it's like a long series of regcasts stretching back into antiquity we've been doing for Windows 7.
Yeah, we've been looking at the whole desktop thing in general, haven't we, on various webcasts.
Yeah.
Previous webcasts, we've looked at the rationale for Windows 7 or migration in general, actually moving off older desktop estates and moving them forward. So the positive reasons for that, the risk management reasons, etc. We've looked at some of the techniques like desktop virtualization at more of a sort of operating system level. We talked a little bit with some of the other guys we've had sitting around this table about applications and the application layer, and everyone obviously says it's important, and we've touched on it, but we haven't actually drilled down into the appliation.
We're all applications.
So it's all about applications. So how to migrate those.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the other guys were terrific, so, I hope you're good. Because, they've built up expectations. But, it's true. But one of the things that we did do with this is we've always treated it like sort of like a project, a sort of like an operation that begins and it ends, and there's little stages that you hit along the way, and if you hit a success of that, and in some ways that's true, but in some ways you're trying to hit a moving target with this sort of thing, aren't you, Ian?
Yeah, see, basically you've got to try and align it with the business requirements, because you can't have a big impact on the business. An application's there for a reason, and as everyone knows, you don't buy it unless you really need to use it. So you can't tinker too much. You've got to be able to keep on delivering that application and keep it updated, without impacting the business.
So the early question here we got from David, it's nice to have an early question on these, is to say, is what you're doing at the Co-op, does it have a finish date, a time when you have got to be finished and you have to say, this is what we did? Or is it just an ongoing process?
I think, like any project, you've got to have an end date.
Yeah.
But I would say overall it's a phase, and after phase 1 you'll come with phase 2, because as you go further down the line you've still got to go back and retest, or lessons learned at the last minute may need to be applied at the beginning. Mm-hmm. New technology, because as we said, we started in 2009.
Yeah.
By the time our first main gateway is, which is September 2012, IE9 will be standard. The new Windows invariant may be out. There'll be new thin operating systems that we've got to look at. So it's quite a hard answer to say there's an end date.
That's a really good point, though. And the highlight there is that change is constant. And nobody wants to go through these big bang transformations anymore. So really what you're trying to do is put in a process that allows you to just manage the change constantly. Mm-hmm. Yes, you want to get Windows 7 deployed at some point. You want the organisation to standardise on something like Windows 7. But the technology around that, the virtualization technologies, application, desktops, the users bringing in their own devices, is a constant change. So it's really about producing a system and a process.
It's what we've actually worked on. We've actually done an end-to-end life cycle study now of an application, which has been, it's something that needed to be done, because it's not one thing that does everything. And if you've got a clear structure and a clear process, then people know what the guidelines are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but this time it's also trying to isolate the operating system, so that going forward we shouldn't go through the pains of Windows 95 to Windows XP. It took us a long time. We didn't bother going to Vista because I had a bit of baggage.
You're still traumatised.
So by saying, right, this is more or less, the businesses don't want to keep investing in operating systems and the change. Yeah. So this is really, I think, the last big bang for an operating system.
So the work you've been doing so far, just, we don't want to sort of give away all our secrets straight away, but the work you've been doing so far has kind of abstracted the applications from the operating system, so you can, because you haven't done your migration to Windows 7 yet, have you?
No, we haven't actually moved into the live environments. We have got the test environments, and we're now doing backward compatibility on some applications that have flagged up as, maybe a challenge.
Great, so if that's where you are today, then this is the Regcast for you. But Dale, you're going to tell us a little bit about where Reg readers are today with their applications. That's a lot of applications.
There's a lot of apps there, isn't there? And I think
more than 1,000.
Sorry, more than 1,000.
People more than 1,000 apps.
How many you got, then, Ian?
We stopped counting at just over 1,400.
We've got deployments where we're operating where it's north of 8,000, 9,000 applications.
8,000 applications
that are under management, and that's still not counting the stuff that is on the periphery that's not necessarily known by IT.
I didn't know there were 8,000 applications. Honestly.
But yeah, I mean, even small companies have tens of applications, quite a lot of them. So it's the application layer gets pretty complex. And if you go to the next slide, Tim, I mean, this is from recent Reg research, as is this one.
Yeah.
And a lot of people probably some people out there responded to this survey, actually. How much do you have a handle on what is actually out there?
Rough idea only
I know.
of actually the apps you've got, yeah. But you can understand that, because people end up deploying their own, sort of installing their own applications at a departmental level, and you've got sort of like 14 different versions of the same app.
And I think coming back to what we touched on a minute ago, the last time a lot of people actually knew, or even had a reasonable idea of what was installed out there, was when they did their XP migration, because they had to test everything. But it's been quite a few years now since they've done that, and all we can see, a lot of people don't even try to monitor what's deployed. They'll deploy it out there and then forget it, really. So there's
they might be saying that in between times, when your infrastructure's pretty stable and you're just running it, doesn't really matter if you know or not.
Well, you've still got a challenge, because whatever applications are going on, if someone's downloading an application, it potentially could have a negative impact, not just on that PC, but the rest of the network. And if you're not putting controls in place around licensing, maintenance, and doing they're just looking for the operating system, but also starting to look across the applications to see the interoperability between applications, that can have some negative. And if it has a negative impact on a user, then it's got a cost associated to it.
Yeah, it affects support, it affects maintenance, it affects cost of licensing. There's a compliance issue. And
it's not eating up your bandwidth as well. Some of them
they do.
And snuck in voice over IP and that sort of thing.
Yeah. The other thing as well is, I mean, we've been talking about a number of applications, but actually you take any one of those apps and there's probably multiple versions out there installed as well. So that complicates things even further.
Some of the less well-written applications don't always overwrite their previous apps, so you end up with duplicate sort of, version 0.01, but the other one stays there. So then when you're actually starting to create images, we actually do a hell of a lot of work with XP in controlling the images and trying to lock the images down where it's feasible. But we also monitor applications being downloaded, and then we take the reactive to that. But again, it's resource time, so you're spending more time trying to police than...
Well, if you can, sorry. I was going to say that one of the things we see regularly in the engagement that we get involved in, and recently it's about Windows 7, and we see organisations time after time going through this auditing process, saying, I've got to get hold of my applications, and they find that between XP, when they deploy that, and today, there are hundreds of duplicate applications that have crept in that they're paying for. And they realise, actually, when they go through a rationalisation process of trimming the application portfolio down, they just saved a fortune. But how much did it cost them in the interim? And they're thinking, okay, let's try and take hold of this now and not get into the same, diverge from what we know about. And so the opportunity to save tangible amounts of money after putting in a good process, after you've slimmed the portfolio down, is a significant opportunity. It really is. And we're seeing organisations now going, right, let's put controls in, let's not have this sprawl, so that in 3 years' time we're going through this massively expensive and painful process yet again.
Yeah.
So I would really stress that, because listening to these guys, but also other people we've spoken with, if you just define the exercise as migrating to Windows 7, you kind of missed what's going on in the wider world, because now today there are all kinds of ways to actually get your act together so that you don't have to lurch from big migration to big migration as you have in the past. So this is a time to take the opportunity, and it wasn't really that possible around XP. There were options available, but there's certainly not as many as today.
It was the tools, the experience, the resource, and the mindset, really, of businesses were sort of growing and maturing.
So you want Windows 8, Windows whatever down the line to actually be a part of that smooth process, don't you? That's kind of the objective.
Now, one of the things that we are talking about today, I'm clicking badly here today, is that is looking at desktop virtualization.
Yeah, so coming back to really what we just mentioned, there are lots of options now. So a lot of people are familiar with what that top bar is relating to, which is your classic kind of Citrix thin client approach or server-based computing approach. Yeah. But actually, there are a whole bunch of other options for virtualizing the operating system and other components, and we're focused on that third one today, which is the application
virtualization. Are you using all of these technologies, Ian? Or?
Yeah, basically, from when, obviously on the journey we've started, which was sort of perceived as best as breed, and then as we've learned, we've then sort of been able to say, well, okay, we know where the bottlenecks. It was like the hidden bottlenecks. So what we've been able to do is like see what technology, go back to our vendors and say, this is what we want, when can we have it? So they've responded, and our next sort of design that is actually ready to be implemented now will change the way we did it before. We were talking about before where it's going to reduce the footprint. The cost is the same. The reason the cost is the same because we're buying the latest technology. So we're going to be moving over to the Fusion IO. We're going to be moving... The Fusion IO is one of the biggest problems with desktop virtualization is the IO requirements.
Yeah.
So we're actually dealing with that. But by adopting the new technology, we can condense it down in the footprint, which is one of our challenges of making sure we're green as well.
I think one of the other things that's interesting is that, as you said, in some respects, Ian and the Co-op are taking each of those different components of virtualization and using them appropriately. There isn't a concept that says we're virtualizing all of our desktops and everything's going to be fine. That's a good solution for a number of different use cases. But then, are you going to virtualize your applications? Actually, that makes sense too. But it also makes sense if you have a virtual desktop to use presentation virtualization into that virtual desktop. So you attract a lot of these different technologies, and that gets you your best efficiency. And it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not going to be the whole organisation suddenly becoming virtual.
Doesn't that increase sort of complexity? I mean, I know it's slightly artificial that journalists do this sort of thing and say, well, you either do that or you do this one.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons you do that is because you have one mindset. Everyone's pushing behind one thing. Yeah. What you're saying is combine these technologies to get the maximum efficiency.
Absolutely, and that's the reality, but not all applications are suitable or physically can virtualize, for example. So do you then not do any virtualization at all? Well, actually, the answer is understand which ones are appropriate and which ones are suitable, and then use the alternative deployment methods for the ones that aren't. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do the virtualization, but it does introduce complexity, as you say. Which ones, how do I discover manually which ones are going to work and which ones aren't? And that's the basis for our technology, which is actually there is a way to do this automatically. And really importantly, though, is don't get scared off by the complexity.
If you're going to do it 1,400 times manually, then it's going to be an bigger
if you approach to do it 1,400 times, we couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
It's a simple, and your project would be never ending, and it would just... Well, it would just be chaos.
Yeah. Okay.
Another way for you journalist types to look at it, Tim. Is,
I'm a type now, actually, am I? Please do go on.
Everything traditionally has been installed on the PC, and it's really a case of there's a whole bunch of stuff you can just bring the control back to the server, or you can bring the execution back to the server. So all you're doing is, in any given situation, you're saying, well, which of these things do I want to centralise, and which aspects control, or... And if you think of it that way, it's actually not that.
Yeah.
Or even for a journalist.
It depends what type of person you are. Your type. Let's find out about that. Let's find out. Yeah, I'll get you for this. Yeah, just you wait. Now, let's. If we find out exactly how this works in relation to the co-op, because this is why you're here, Ian. Apart from your obvious sort of good looks and charm. Tell us, the co-op is a kind of complicated business because there's a lot of it, isn't there?
Yeah, basically, the cooperative group in the UK is part of the cooperative movement, which is worldwide.
Yeah.
So in the UK itself, it's one member, one vote, and one share.
Mm-hmm.
So we're actually owned by 6 million people. So anyone can go in there, they can pay the pound, and get the card, shop at the co-op, and you get dividend points, the older people remember your stamps you used to get and things like that. So
Sharing co-op. That's
it. And blowing in the wind, that's it. Get all the advertising done now,
yeah. But it's, so there's lots of people who are going, what on earth are those old geezers on about? Now, what this does, but you do have lots of different businesses combined together under the co-op umbrella.
Yeah.
And you're responsible for the IT for all of them?
For what we refer to as the trading group.
The trading group.
Whilst I'm not responsible, I do work on the designs for them. The CIO might get a bit upset when he says we're responsible.
He's not watching.
But yeah, for all of the sort of integration of the designs and make sure they do integrate, it's one of my key roles to do that.
And so there is an element to this in which it's pulling different types of business together into a common common pattern.
What we're trying to do is not so much as we're trying to deliver a common platform.
Yeah.
But still give them the individuality as a business. But also showing that by being part of, as part of a standardisation, there are some bits as a business they mightn't well be able to afford. But by adopting the standardisation, then it becomes more cost effective for them as well.
Yeah.
So it starts to deliver a hell of a lot more on, the business continuity plans and all the things like that. So
and even I remember you telling me the story of how any normal business, when it acquires another organisation, faces challenges of integration, and you guys are by definition just a collection of an enormously diverse set of businesses. So you've taken that concept of acquiring another business and it's sort of writ large within the cooperative.
I think that's one of the things that's sort of why we've got so many applications, because obviously the main interest is when we're bringing businesses together is to make sure the business stay traded. Yeah. So a lot of tactical manoeuvres have been used in the past.
So specifically, let's then look at the sort of strategically what you're doing in the last couple of years, because this is what you've got here, all these different pressures on IT transformation.
Yeah. Basically what we're trying to sort of think, we said we started the journey in 2009. And basically, it started from a first task that was given to myself was to look at the power consumption for desktops throughout the Manchester complex. And there was a lot of good tools out there like Night Watchman and that side of it, and they were coming back with return of investments, and they were all very valid. But we also then got sort of thing that we were going to look at a new head office, and the new head office then became like sort of key driver. So we put like a quick win in to save the power on the normal desktops, just using group policies. And then obviously started to plan for the new head office. Now the new head office is being built to BREEAM Outstanding, there's not many buildings in the UK. I think you've got one in London at the moment.
So it's built to what?
BREEAM Outstanding. Basically, it's a building regulation. It's all based around sort of power, energy uses, your carbon credits and that side of it. So we had to then sort of make sure as IT that what we're actually putting into that building is as green as physically possible to allow the business to carry on trading, which is a key element. So, if a business has got a requirement for a rich PC, shall we say, then they've got a requirement. That's a business requirement. But primarily what we are doing is delivering. There'll be approximately 3,000 thin devices in that building for people to do either from a fixed, what we class as residence, but then there'll be up to, between 3 and 700, depends how the figures keep going, hot desks, so that there'll be a contended environment, like a 3-to-1 contention. And it's very hard to sort of plan it when you get these firm projects. And the reason behind that is because we're just looking at the head office complex. But because we're such a diverse business, we'll get the regional people actually coming to head office anyway. Okay. So this is where you've sort of got to start around for things.
This sounds like a planning nightmare to me, because the difference between having 300 and 700 hot desks, for example, or the exact proportion of thin clients, and fat PCs and things like that, all of that just seems to me to really affect how you build the architecture, doesn't it?
No, because I don't see it as a nightmare challenge. The reason behind that is because the solutions that we're putting in place are very flexible. So we've got the flexibility. We're using Zen Desktop primarily. So if we've got our customers actually converted onto Zen Desktop, it is a Martini effect anywhere, anytime, any place. Mm-hmm. So the reason for the sort of big variance is we're also integrating the financial services are coming into the new head office.
Right.
And that's the 400 seats that are being brought in. And we're obviously in deep discussions at the moment of how that's going to look, but there's a very good chance that they're going to be adopting the same or very similar technology, and also stick with, hopefully, some of the processes that we've already gone through all the trials and tribulations. So do I. So that's our challenge at this moment in time. That's the complexity. It's not really the building side. It hasn't been an easy task.
Yeah.
But really looking forward now, it's flexible. Mm-hmm. That's what our plans are in that sort of area. Mm-hmm.
But had you not had the foundation in place, it would be really complex, I guess, wouldn't it, to cope with that variation in requirements. So
yes,
the rationale for putting a,
I suppose you could say it was a visionary statement in 2009 where we knew where the technology was going. Was it there? We knew it wasn't there, but at the end of the day, because of the fast-moving pace of technology, if a business wants it, a vendor's got to deliver it. Mm. So if the vendors start to know that the business is looking at it, then they'll start accelerating their deliverables.
He's kind of modest when he talks about this, because these guys back then were doing something and they were taking a real, in a way, a leap of faith, but saying, we can spot something here, we can do this. There's a virtualization play here that will give us agility and flexibility down the line, and they're now inheriting the benefits that they started planning for back then. And it is about agility.
But it's very hard to get off the mark with this, though, because you're saying, okay, well, we've got a building, we don't know quite how it's going to work, and we're going to be working in a way which isn't quite set in stone across a lot of different businesses with technology that is still evolving and in some cases isn't here at all yet. Okay, let's do it. Well, at that point, people say, no, let's not.
If you go out for a big meal and you've got a big plate of food,
you
don't just grab it all and eat it.
You
actually started, you take it in areas. So you take an area and you start concentrating your trials, you do then your proof of concept. So we started from 40 up to 200, up to 600, and we're now over 1,100. The applications are following suit. We're now up to, I think, about 350 applications, but we've retired over 100 applications as part of the consolidation in that side of it. So it's an ongoing journey.
How many of your applications have you built yourself? How much is bespoke and how much is commercial standard applications?
Very good question, well presented. A lot. No, I'd say we're in, a lot of the applications that we've done ourselves are primarily either .NET based or HTML5. So they've been built with flexibility. We have got legacy applications which have ported. So we haven't had a sort of an application that's been built and we don't know the code, so we haven't been able to port it. Mm-hmm. But figures, I haven't exactly got all the figures on things.
No, the more important thing is about that, because we've got questions already, it's a legacy application.
I was going to say, it's a common one, and depending on the sector, and I must say, it does vary slightly between industry verticals.
Yeah.
Finance, for example, is massively, has a lot of internally developed applications, and that can be 40% of a portfolio. And the question is, a lot of the times that's been developed by somebody who's no longer around. How can we begin to analyze and understand whether it's going to work? And if it doesn't work, what do we do about it? These are important. They're sort of unknown unknowns, and actually that's one of the things that we do. We can take an entire portfolio. We don't care whether it's internally developed or an off-the-shelf ISV application. We treat them all the same. The analytics will give the same level of detail for all types of applications, and that's the starting point. So once you can actually say, I can now see my portfolio, I have an understanding. And the first thing about Windows 7, by the way, in terms of it's, the first question is, are my apps going to be compatible? It's a very good story. People who are on XP today, a typical portfolio compatibility rating is about 65 to 75% green when we analyze the portfolio. So there's a very high, can move forward very quickly. And people don't understand that. Because if you've got no way other than testing everything to arrive at that answer, you've still invested a huge amount of time, and it could stall your project. So bringing in the automation to analyze the portfolio is a key change.
You use your own tools to analyse application compatibility.
Yes, yeah.
Because this is a question. There are free tools as well, aren't there?
There are.
Microsoft has a free tool.
That's
Yours
right.
is better?
We
think so.
Our customers would say that they choose to invest in our technology versus the free technology from Microsoft. Look, in truth, ACT has a place to play in this equation. It's quite good if you don't have any auditing capabilities. It will discover your environment. It's very useful if you want to use shims as a compatibility solution. It has a different methodology, though. It's an agent-based tool which listens to your environment and listens for defects and stores the defects. Our technology is all about not only Windows 7, but it's about your portfolio. So our technology imports and understands the portfolio
through all the applications.
So we understand how the apps work together. Yeah. Will they work on Windows 7? Will they work in virtualization on 64-bit? How do they work against the operating system build? So we're all about this DNA for the portfolio as opposed to just analyze, find defects, and get forward. So, but yes, it's our technology, and Microsoft has a technology. But we coexist.
For different things. But
that's right.
For a large scale, well, I mean, because you're involved with this one, but on this large scale where there are a lot of moving parts, you really do need to be completely on top of this because you're going to be making decisions on what you do with the applications.
That's the key thing is like you've got to ensure, or you're trying to start managing the risk with data that you can actually use as support and sort of evidence when you have to, or you say you haven't anticipated an application's not going to migrate, or it is actual work required. So you don't want to tell a department, right, you're migrating next week, and 3 of their key applications are all red. Yeah. Because it'll just be a nightmare. So it's the first time that I've been have the evidence, so that it helps us plan going forward. To start knowing what potential risks are around the corner.
And I guess getting those red applications as well means sometimes you retire some of the applications.
It can be. Yeah. And it's also the way it's delivered, because obviously we're primarily in the Citrix environment, but you've got like a non-persistence, you've got a persistence, you've got a dedicated blade, and the application may be red because it needs to go on a blade, or there may be something that needs to be manual intervention to say, if you do this, it'll turn from red to amber to green. So there's always opportunities, and one thing we've always been preaching is that it's not one size fits all. It's flexibility, and once you've got your flexibility, there's another layer that's starting to come down now is automation. So you then got your automation layer. I know you referred to before about complexity. It's actually simplifying it, because once a process has been written, you can let an automation tool then dovetail into that. So then you get your self-service events and all that side of it.
It makes that possible. It makes it accessible.
Yeah. So it becomes a lot more easy to do, and then you can start, you say, God forbid, give it to the end user to actually, start playing with it. But that's what we've got to do to make it, A, faster turnaround, but it's also, there's a clear cost going back to that person who's requesting the work, and they can have it in limited timescales as well.
Yeah. Do you predict, now that a lot of people are starting to get into their Windows 7 migrations and reassessing their desktops, do you predict a sort of bonfire of the applications? The people who get into this are going to start looking again at their portfolio and really mucking it out?
Yeah. Well, it's the obvious thing to do, actually, because migrating something, well, if you use this kind of approach we've been talking about here, then at least you know they're red or they're amber. If you're embarking on this and you're taking very much a manual approach, then the cost is even more when you look at migrating application. So yes, it's an obvious thing to do. Can I ask a question though? When you get a green, what does that actually mean? How reliable is that green?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the way our technology works is we don't have to install or run the application, so we get a very deep understanding of every single file and the way the files interact. But there is a slice of stuff that we can't see in our technology, but that represents about 5 to 10%. So if we say something's green, it's about a 90 to 95% degree of accuracy, which if you say, here are 500 apps, we've given them a green light, to declare those as being green by hand would take, weeks or months. So the process for us is fast track the ones that are green, the ones that are critical in green, put them through some catch testing, make sure that there's a safety net, and the ones that are less critical, push them out there. And so the efficiency that you get is phenomenal. We're not a silver bullet, but we're an enormous time saving and efficiency saving and resource saving. And it de-risks the whole project. And that's an important part.
I think goes down to like the financial arena. I've always seen IT as a black art, but this gives us the sort of details now and the analysis to say this is the impact that it's having, and this is where the money's actually going.
And that's an important one as well. The ability now, and we go into an organisation and they're having the question about, can I do application virtualization? I just don't know. Can I do 64-bit? We'll analyse, 1,000 applications in a few days or a week, and we say, here is the empirical data based on your applications. This is the state of play. And to be able to do that in just a few days allows them to then think and plan appropriately.
And that ends up driving their hardware choices as well.
Right.
On a simple selection, for example, for 64-bit.
It's for the hardware, say, just be careful about saying drives the hardware choice, because what we're trying to do is make that
agnostic,
because it should be able to deliver it in a virtual world. So you're not really saying it'll only work on this device, and that's I think where we've got to be
right. Yeah, I'm sort of falling back into that trap of tying things to other things, and this is exactly what you're trying to get away from. Yeah. Can you explain to me your infrastructure diagram here? I never understand these Christmas trees. I just genuinely don't.
Well, it's it's my fault. Marketing have to get the sort of thing in on this.
Yeah.
But basically, where they look at the queue and where things have grown together, it's like ourselves, where we've had even within businesses within the co-op, you've had business that were silos have actually come together. And they have sort of loose connectivity, and certain service will be delivered. We've had acquisitions over the last couple of years. If you think of Summerfield. Now, Summerfield has been done, and that was done in sort of what I think is a record time.
You bought Summerfield, yeah.
Well, that, to a certain extent, that's in my perspective, I'll probably get shot by marketing, but that's a good thing, because it's been seamless and painless, and it's been done in a very fast time. And that's the thing of getting this type of model and bringing it, into streamlining all the applications, making sure that the Christmas tree does simplify, and that's what we're using Zen Desktop and the virtualization to drive it through all the businesses. So we're moving from the left to the right to streamline it.
Now, let's look at Windows 7's role in all of this. You're saying that Windows 7 is kind of like creeping up on you. It's something that you can slot in at one level of your Christmas tree, at the bottom level of your Christmas tree there. What's it going to give you?
Well, I wouldn't say it's creeping. I think it's like a steam train coming down the road, and everyone's been waiting it for next week.
The light at the end of the tunnel as the train coming towards you.
So obviously with some of the key features within the application packaging is obviously the optimization pack for the applications, how it interacts, and how it's delivered. And particularly we use the AppV packaging, which came across as being more successful than the Citrix version. However, again, it's not, as you're saying about silver bullets, it's not one app does all.
So you're going to have some AppV and some Citrix?
Yes, we will do, yeah. One of the things with various businesses, they may have already pre-packaged as Citrix. Well, do you want to spend time converting them if it's working? Right. Probably not, but you might want to integrate all the databases so at least you've got a central store for your applications. So we'll probably do that. And that's where we're sort of tying into AppV. So as part of our application life cycle, we've got from the discovery, going into the app DNA, going to AppV, going to Microsoft Development Toolkit, going into System Center Configuration Manager. So from there, but then next step's obviously to go up to Opalis or Dynamic Ops and see which is the automation tool that is going to be tying down. So then we'll have the ability to start automating a lot of the work. And it means that we can start using our limited resource more efficiently. And realistically, their skills will actually come up, because when you talk about complexity, it's still technical. And and there is a bit more. It's just slight different ways of doing things in processes.
Is there an organisational tendency for everyone to get started on little bits and pieces of this, and suddenly you're managing lots of people doing lots of things, but you have to keep a lid on all of this and make sure that you do the thing that needs to be done today?
It's been the hardest part. That's why we said it's in chunks, basically. But we are getting we're concentrating on Manchester Complex. However, various businesses in the branches, like our funeral cares, they've now just adopted the similar technology and rolled out to all their branches. So, but you've got to sort of keep that as a separate project, but obviously I'm integrating into that to make sure.
So in this chunks, because there are a couple of questions on a where do I start sort of basis, to take these sort of chunks out, an achievable part of the project that you can do today offers the possibility of reuse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it certainly does. And there's, I think, because it's theoretically so new, that depending on the size of the business, I think it's probably to a certain extent easier for the larger businesses because they'll be able to deal directly with their vendors, and the vendors themselves can offer that, because we wouldn't have got anywhere without working with everyone. We work, HP, AppDNA, Dynamic Ops, Strategic Technologies, Microsoft, Citrix, they were all very key and they were all willing to help us on our journey. And that's what's helped us all the way through. It's not us. This is what we come across in the presentations. It's the team. And the team doesn't have to be internal.
Sure. So, simple question here. When you go into Windows 7, you're going to have to retest all your applications again?
At this moment in time, we've got 365 applications, I think, gone through. Yeah. And of that, we're actually going to retest. We've been testing against Windows 7, for quite a long time. But literally within the last week, we're now signed up with a Microsoft EA agreement, which is actually give us the ability for a volume license, which we've now put on a KMS server, which now ties into a Windows 7 image. So we're slimming the image down so it's more, it's more, the speed's increased for the actual virtualization. So what we are doing is those applications that have shown up amber, is we're just going to rerun them against that image.
And this is one of the things where our technology comes to play, which is we import the applications, we test them against Windows 7. Actually, there's a new build of Windows 7, or something's changed about the organization's build, or Windows 8 comes along. We have the information about the apps, we pull in the new build, and we rerun the analysis. It's not about retesting, it's about reanalyzing the data.
The analysis sits there, basically, and you can run it from time to time.
Exactly. And this is where we can adapt to things that we haven't yet seen, because we have the information about the applications. And your question is, will this application work against this new thing? And we connect the dots with our analytics and our algorithms that we run within the database. And that means you can start to answer these questions and adapt very quickly.
This is very cunning. You're never going to be out of work.
Can I ask really something occurring to me? I mean, you've put this in place over quite a period of time. If you were sitting in a pub with a mate and you say, look, I've just inherited this XP estate, it's in a bit of a mess, it's not very well managed, what would you advise them would be the first 2 or 3 things to put in place to get their act together for this migration?
Well, I think one of the key things that we've found a challenge in day one is obviously you've got to assess your applications. The hardware, the technologies, is run of the mill now. It's probably blasé from me saying that, but
well, it might be run of the mill for you, but for your mate in the pub, he might not necessarily be up to speed on all that. So, is there anything particular, technology-wise, that you'd put the focus on, or infrastructure-wise?
Well, the infrastructure-wise, I think you got to get sort of key areas that sort of take the longest is your applications. If you are going to do it manually, then it's forever and a day. So you've really got to see and analyse your applications, and you're not on your own. That's one of the key ones. Look out there. I know you've got some slides at the end which give some places that you can go to get advice, but seek advice, but also don't just seek advice from one quarter. I've had quite a few people, coming in, giving me the spiel and sort of saying how well their software can do this for me, and this is how you should virtualize it.
Don't believe any one of them on their
Correct.
own. Yes, absolutely.
But obviously ourselves, we'll concentrate with Microsoft, we're concentrated with Citrix. We did do an analysis when we first started. We did the Sunray, we did the VMware, we did SoftGrid as it was then, and we did HP when they had a flavour out. We actually went with Citrix. We were a Zen app or a presentation server at the time. We'd been there for a few years, so we actually started to tie it in. Also, we talk about the applications. Once you've done this work, and then you've got to actually control how the applications actually go down to the end device and the end user and the customizations. And you may need to look at another application that actually looks at the management. So obviously we use AppSense, but RES software do the same as well. So there is other things out there that can help you in starting to do all the controls. So there's a lot out there.
So these are things that take care of the personalisation, settings, all that kind of stuff around applications.
I think as you grow, but you can also, if you're a small company, then you can actually get all of this delivered overnight online. You can go to a central source and they will deliver you a virtual desktop solution, and they will work with you with your applications. If you've got 5, 10 applications, but I'm not limiting it to that. They can do that for you, and it becomes more cost effective, so it reduces your capital. And the biggest problem but when you start off with virtual desktop, it appears to be capital intensive for the first year. But if you do your cost model over 2 to 3 years, you'll see, wow, I'm saving in my maintenance, I'm saving in my applications. The applications is very hard to sort of quantify, because it gives you the ability to do things that you wouldn't have never done before. You wouldn't have patched it all up to date. You just said, well, I'll just do the top 2 Microsoft Tuesday patches. So it starts to give you take some of the sort of overhead off your resource to make sure your resource is actually doing things what they should be concentrating on. So again, you can do that as well.
There's a couple of questions on how you made decisions. SCCM's coming up. I see. Have you used that? Did you use that?
Basically, SCCM went live about 3 weeks ago, primarily for the desktop. But again, SCCM's a big application, and that's now been superseded by the server, because the server people are now, right, we can start doing this. We've put a stake in the ground to say that our new data centre coming online soon. All the servers where we can will be delivered via the SCCM. So we'll start pushing the scripts to make sure that everything goes into the new head office is delivered automated via SCCM.
Great. It's I want to make sure that we've got enough time. Well, you've got some time just to talk about what's app DNA. We've touched on a lot of this, but your diagram pulls it all together exactly what you do here.
Sure. I think the key takeaway for us is there is a new way to do things here, and people, when I talk to them and show them what we do and how we do it, pretty much universally go, where were you when we did this last time? I wish we had known about this. And, going from left to right, the concept is take your applications, whether anything that installs to a Windows client, a Windows server, or even web applications, put them through an automated process which analyzes them, and, we can do hundreds and thousands of apps in days. And then you map your organizational objectives onto the analytics. So, like Ian's App V, if it doesn't work in App V, then possibly Citrix Zen App Streaming. And if it doesn't work in either of those two, then we'll deliver it via a Windows installer package. And we'd like it to work on a 64-bit platform, and it needs to work on Windows 7. So we can map all of those objectives into the analytics and start to deliver actionable outcomes. So an application may be read. It doesn't mean it won't work, but here is the report that tells you what to do to make it work for those targets. So the idea of, yes, we've got 4 or 5 technologies, and it's how do I get my arms around that when I've got 500 or 5,000 apps? That's the complex thing on the surface, which is really difficult to crack. When you flip that around and say, well, here is the report that tells you exactly how to do that, it changes the game.
So that leads into Ian's strategy of breaking off bits of the business and saying, to get this done, this is what we will need to do, and your report tells them
exactly. And
steps there are.
so even if we've got the whole portfolio, let's say it's a company with 1,400 or 5,000 apps, we've imported them, but we also integrate with SCCM and Active Directory. So we can now start to say, actually, we're not going to do everyone together. So give me the London office or the finance department and just show me their applications and their suitability to go. And we can then say, actually, department A, B, or C, these guys are actually more ready. Let's use them first as we roll this out.
You do the easy ones or the difficult ones first.
When we started on our journey, the way we approached it is that if the application didn't sort of package when we run it through within 2 days, then we bypassed it. Mm-hmm. We just parked it, moved on. So we ended up with what we class as a hybrid user. So we've got some applications that we're still running on what we refer to as call it the rich environment.
The rich environment. Yeah.
Formerly the fat environment, that one.
Yeah.
And anything that was virtualised, they would only have it delivered virtually. Mm-hmm. Now we're actually going back to those red ones and actually seeing, well, OK, a bit more work and can it be done? And the actual surprise about it is the success rate that we're getting. And it is well up around 95%.
And this is to virtualise the application. And this is a common theme. We talk to organisations and they said, you know, we've had a crack at this application. We've been trying for 2 or 3 days, and each time we package it and we try and run it, it fails. And we spend 2 or 3 days trying to work this out. And we go and we take the application, we analyse it, and they look at the report and say, you know, there's 200 things here which you've identified which probably make this a bad candidate for virtualisation.
They could still sort out 199 of them, but it would still...
Right. Yeah. And then you suddenly say, well, you know what, maybe this is not a good candidate. We could make this work, but it might be just too much trouble. Mm-hmm. So having that kind of information up front makes the whole process massively more efficient. And then you start to get much higher success rates, actually, because you see that the application's got a component that's going to be problematic. Mm-hmm. You deal with it, you make it work, and you get a high degree of applications virtualized.
Mm-hmm. I get
One of the key components is those keeping that department involved in the education, working with the managers. And what we've said is when we've come across that sort of challenge, the actual managers said, well, OK, no problem. We'll just put it on one PC in the corner. It's not used that often. If someone wants to use it, they can go to that PC and they can run it there. So it's a two-way thing. We can show, but this is why the tool gives us the evidence to say, listen, this is what we're trying to do, and this is the area, you know, where the challenges are. Mm-hmm. To do this, it's X cost. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's only used once a month. And they say, well, just put it over there for now.
So it's not about being dogmatic or purist, it's about being pragmatic, really, isn't it?
Yeah. It's about getting stuff off your desk, isn't it? If you've got 1,400 apps and however many, and thousands of desktops, and you've got to get stuff done so you can get on to the next thing.
And that's having the information at your fingertips to be able to make those decisions.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the award-winning App DNA aptitude. How did we let this sneak through?
That was a good move on marketing.
I obviously had my attention elsewhere when these slides came through.
Is that the twice winning?
Twice at Citrix Synergy.
Stop it. You haven't got much time, use it effectively.
No, the really important thing about this slide is if you want to understand a bit more about our technology, you can go onto our website, register and have a play and get a sense of how it works. It's all online. You can just have a play with the technology. But really more importantly, the second part of that, we're able to come in with our partners and effectively deliver a free POC into your environment, and that means getting started. Learn about Windows 7, learn about 64-bit, learn about application virtualization. We're also involved in the Microsoft Jumpstart program, so there are any number of ways to get your hands on our technology, to learn about it, but more importantly, deploy it in your environment and get started. It's not such a bad story. The complexity is tameable. How was that for a bit of marketing?
Let's move. That's enough of that. I feel slightly grubby.
You feel that?
That's enough of that. But let's have a look on what you've actually managed to achieve here. Because, again, when people look back and sort of projects when they're finished and then trying to... But you're evaluating as you go along.
Yeah, we're having to because of... It's like every big business, you've got to be able to quantify it at various stages.
Yeah.
But also the challenges that we get with business as usual. We know we've got data centres that you've got to really keep running keen. So you've got to reduce the footprint, you've got to reduce the power just to put more new equipment in there. Yeah. So the cost side on here is, did we physically save this? No. but it's allowed us to actually use the same power.
Right.
That, you know, it's that size. So it's like wooden dollars. It's moving from A to B. But we've reduced the footprint within the data centres, and they're allowed for the same power draw, which we've already saved by doing virtualisation. So you could put a physical cost against it, but it's not coming back in because we're using it with business as
You're
usual.
actually using that. You're using that to move on.
Yeah, to move on. And so so at least he's saying you're not paying an additional £1 million to actually bring the new kit in.
Yeah, you got positive user feedback at the bottom here. There's one thing, Dale. It's, you know, when we talk about application virtualization, sometimes any sort of desktop virtualization technologies, positive user feedback is something to be valued.
Well, I suppose it comes down to the approach, I think, that we took from day one. And I know both Paul and Dale have actually seen what we did. We actually did a video case study 2 months before the event, on the day, and then 2 months after. And that was, what do you say, warts and all, you know, and you could see the difference. So that when we did it, in all the projects that were sort of done in the past, this one has been really, I think, to me, unique, because the amount of education that we're trying to do up front to keep, like, the department champions, you know, keep them fully involved and updated so they can cascade back down. And the first department we went into, very positive from the manager all the way through, which you could actually see being driven. We had the negative, the apprehensive to start off with, the day one, because it's not just about virtualisation, it's also around cultural change, because at the same time we've actually introduced flexible working. So, you know, just being stuck to that desk, now they don't have a desk. It's not a case if you want a window seat you're first in, because the actual layout of the locations have actually taken that into account. So by making sure that the end colleague who's using it are being positive, is it 100% positive? No. Have we tripped up? Yes. This is live. We're you know, real business, and we have learned lessons going down. But by all, the vast majority of people have been positive about it.
And I guess if you've got that dialogue going where you're keeping it, then it's not a sort of like, I'm going to storm into his office and complain. It's we don't like the way this is working.
There's various ways that they grievance or things can think. We want to capture them as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And that's something that's heavily promoted. So they have their internal champions. They can raise the questions directly on our internal website to ask the CIO. So if he gets the question, it comes down dead fast.
It's funny. I've seen a similar thing, and it's worked brilliantly in the way that Ian's defined it, and I've seen it elsewhere where, you know, you're proposing some sort of change in IT, and the users don't generally want change. And if you just try and sell it, you're always going to be the bad guy, and it doesn't work. But if you give it to a pilot group, and it's successful, suddenly everybody else hears about it, and they start to knock on your door and say, how do we get hold of this? And it's a very smart way of helping the cultural kind of evolution within the business to adopt a new way of accessing desktops and applications. Yeah.
Guys, we're right out of time. We've run out of time. It goes quick, doesn't it?
It
goes quick. There was a lot to talk about today, and so, you know, here's some useful links. Actually, we didn't get through all your questions because they just kept coming in at one point. They just kept, you know, I tried to ask them, I couldn't, and there's some quite specific. So maybe you guys could help answer a couple of those. Wouldn't take you very long. You know, pop it off on him. And so, you know, you got all the benefit. You got his plug-in, so you can answer some questions, work for it. But there's and there's some more again. There's some more helpful links for you. You can watch this again. Get it on the on-demand. Share it share it internally, because I think there was some pretty useful practical information, wasn't there, Dale?
Yeah. Can I just say, I mean,
Yes.
we get the guys who have been successful sitting around this table. You know, we've got Ian today, we've had Royal Mail, we've had others sitting here, and this common denominator of making sure you understand the users, the business, and actually really putting a lot of emphasis on that as well as the technical side of things.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We know that doesn't happen out there in a lot of cases, so that's just something to take
What
away.
we ought to do for a contrast is to get some failures in. Get some
Could be
people,
good fun.
because they've got a lot of time on their hands. These guys. They just be happy with a roof over their head.
You may not get them in front of a camera, though.
Yeah. So why did it all go so wrong for you, we could say. That'll be awkward. Guys, thank you very much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Thank you for all your questions and for watching. Please let us know in the feedback what you thought of this, because we'll do more of what you want. I've been Tim Phillips, and so from me, goodbye.